Okay, so let's start talking about written communication. By no means is this going to be a English lecture or anything like that, but we're going to talk about how writing really applies in a medical or a dental office. And as you see through the Create an Office Writing project, that writing is a big component of a dental office in various ways, shapes, and forms. This PowerPoint diverges quite a bit from Chapter 9's textbook material because I'm not going to give you the grammar lesson that's in Chapter 9. So definitely read Chapter 9, but take more stock in what we're about to talk about in this PowerPoint than necessarily what the book says. Okay, so regardless of what position you're working in a dental office or any kind of medical office, there's a lot of times where you need to contact patients through mail, where you need to give them handouts, and things like that. And sometimes just because you're not the secretary doesn't mean that you won't have to make some of these things. In all of the offices that I've worked in, I was the one who was responsible for making these handouts, for these patient guides, for mailings, new patient paperwork. Sorry, that's one of my classmates. For making new patient paperwork, directions to the office, things like that, because I was the one who, first of all, knew how to use a computer and was the most English savvy person in the office. So this could easily fall on you. One of the most important things about something that's written that is leaving the office is that it represents the office. So if you've taken an English class with me, we talk about how an audience judges you in black and white because they don't know you, so all they see is you in black and white. So if you write a resume and you spell your own name wrong, which I've had done many times, someone's going to make a decision about you. It might not be accurate, but they're going to make a decision about you. One of my old bosses, he created the Leahy Clinic for the uninsured up at the University of Scranton. He was the president of the Lackawanna County Medical Society. He was an extremely intelligent physician, very intelligent man, and because he was getting the clinic off the ground, he would have to write letters to other doctors quite often asking for money or time or something like that. And he asked me to mail his letter, and most secretaries just put them in an envelope and mailed them, but instead I read it, and it was horrible. I had it marked with so much red pen, he was screaming at me, and he held the paper up and he looked at me and he goes, "What the hell is this?" And I said, "Well, to me it looks like a piece of crap." I said, "You are so intelligent, but you're going to send out that letter with all of these spelling mistakes, asking people for their trust and their money? I would think that you were a datafu," as we say in Italian, or a total moron. So anything that you're sending from the office represents the office. So in your Create an Office Writing project, if you get your own letterhead wrong, that's a problem. If you don't know how to make one of those letters that's leaving the office, that's a problem. It can make you look unprofessional. And remember, we talked about dentistry as a business and that you want to attract and keep those patients so that you can generate money, so that you can get benefits and days off and stuff like that. So there are things that are not talked about in your chapter that I want to talk about. These are the different kinds of things that you might have to create in your office. Some of the things are things that I have asked you to create for that writing project, which is one of the reasons why you're working on that project. Templates. Now, these are things that you can either do by hand or you can do through an EMR system. And if you don't know what an EMR system is, you will as soon as you listen to that recording or you hear that lecture in class. So a template is basically kind of an auto-filled form where most of the areas are already filled in. There are very little areas where someone else would have to fill something in to customize it to each patient that you can give to them. These are way more helpful on an EMR system. So for example, let's say a patient in my chair has gingivitis. I go to my EMR system, I find my template for gingivitis education, and I have it set up so that it will automatically populate the patient's name, date of birth, diagnosis, date of service, and phone number. And then there's all the information about gingivitis. And then I can just print it out and give it to them. When this is done by hand, you would have to manually fill in, the patient's name, their date of birth, make a photocopy of it for the chart, and make a photocopy of it for the patient. So if you're in an office that utilizes an EMR, it works faster and better. Now, sometimes you might be the one who's actually creating these templates within the EMR or by hand, if you're the one who's good at this stuff. But these templates can really save a lot of time, and they're very efficient when it comes to things that you use constantly. Care instructions, post-care instructions, pre-care instructions. So there'll be some patients who will need to be medicated before they come into the office. So maybe a how-to about the medication. Any kind of patient education that you can give out is super, super helpful. Okay, so here are some issues though. Some offices don't have a function for templates. Some EMR systems don't have pre-made templates, and you have to create them yourself or ask the company to create them. Offices using paper charts, you have to create a paper template, which is a little bit more difficult. But you can still make these templates. So in the office that I worked at when we were all paper, I would type them out on the computer and print them out, and we would have a stack of them ready, and you just filled in the stuff that you needed to fill in. Usually someone within the office makes these because it's a lot cheaper because you're already on the payroll and you just do it while you're punched in or something like that. The external service that I'm talking about is usually like the support technicians through the EMR company that you have, or sometimes you might have an outside consultant come in to make these. So for example, since I have experience making these in paper and in an EMR system, maybe I want to become an independent consultant and I go into an office and help them out. That would be an external service. Okay, so I think you can kind of read this yourself, and this might be you. So the person inside the office who is going to make these templates is usually the one who's the best at writing, and that's going to be the same person who's, making the patient education sheets, pamphlets, brochures, things of that nature. Not just the secretary, because it has to do with paperwork. So, now, regardless of what kind of correspondence, all of your correspondence has to be professional. It has to be spell checked. It has to be accurate. It must be typed. It should contain patient ID information. And it should be objective, especially if it's something that you're sending to the patient about the patient, like their records. So it should only be facts. So, for example, let's say in N grade I made a report of everybody every day, and I wrote that Susie was really aggravated today and didn't participate in class. That's subjective because that's my opinion. If I switch that to Susie stated she was aggravated because she had a bad morning, due to this she did not participate in class very much. That's quite different than just writing down my observation. So you don't want anything that could possibly be misinterpreted. Okay, so HIPAA comes into play when we talk about written correspondence, and we're going to get into HIPAA more. But everybody fills out a HIPAA form, and on the HIPAA form, or they should at least, and on the HIPAA form, it states whether the patient approves that you can mail them things or not. If this is not checked off, you cannot mail them anything in an identifiable envelope. So a lot of office envelopes have letterhead in the upper left corner. If a patient does not allow you to mail them things, you either have to send it in a blank envelope, or you have to call them and have them come pick it up. Or you can call them and they'll go, oh yeah, just mail it, that's fine. Then you have to document it in the chart and then have them re-sign the HIPAA when they come back in. One of the most important things that you can gather from this chapter is documentation. Documentation in any kind of medical field is so unbelievably important. Kind of the rule of thumb is cover thy butt. But if it wasn't written, if it's not documented, it's not done. So every conversation that you have with a patient, regardless of how minor you think it is, anything you hand a patient, regardless of how minor you think it is, a copy has to go in the chart, or documentation needs to be made showing this was the conversation that we had, on what date, with what person. If you give the patient a handout, there should be a copy of it in the chart, whether electronically or physically, stating how the patient got it. Handed this to patient at visit on 10/5/14 at 8:24 a.m. It sounds ridiculous, but it's these little small pieces of proof that can come back and really help you. When there's a discrepancy, when a patient is mad, or when a patient is claiming something wasn't done, or if any legal action for some reason is ever taken. So you have to document everything. One of the other things that's not in your text is about certifying. So a lot of the times you need to mail things from the office certified with a return receipt is what it's called. And the reason that you do this is for proof that someone actually received it. So a lot of the times the things that would get sent certified with a return receipt are dismissals from the practice. So let's say Susie is a patient of mine and she's missed 45 appointments and I don't want her in my practice anymore. I'm going to send her a dismissal letter, but I'm going to mail it certified, which means it doesn't get left in her mailbox. The postal worker actually carries it to her front door, knocks on the door, hands her the envelope, and the return receipt means that she has to sign for it, and then I get this little card back with her signature that she received it. And then that little card with her signature and the date goes in her chart to prove that she actually received the notice. It's kind of like sending an email with a red receipt, if that makes any help for you. Or it's like if you have an iPhone and you can turn the settings on, so on a text message you can see when the text message is delivered and when it's read. Same kind of concept, but this is how it's done through the mail. Ta-da! We're done! So that's the end of what you need to know about written communication in addition to what's in the book. So please make sure you read that and you listen to this.